Alright, so next project. This is a job I picked up from somebody else. It's a 1980 Monte Carlo Landau, I believe. It's actually a really nice car. The frame's clean, the body's clean, and it's well optioned. It's a nice car, but going from the 3.8 liter Buick V6 to a small block 350. If you're ever gonna do this, talk to the mechanic. This is what you're gonna do. You're gonna get the car where you need it safely. Get your battery out. First thing is pull off the hood. You'll need it. It's always easier with two people for that. Before you pull your hood off, right here, take a felt, whatever, masking tape, mark it on your hood, draw it out, whatever. So it's way easier to put your hood back in the exact position it was. Otherwise, you'll be fighting it. Fan shroud, rad, the hoses, drain the coolant, do all that stuff. Undo any lines, any wires you can see that are connected to other things. Label the fucking wires like this. Label the vacuum hoses, even if it's just where it came from. Passenger side, back of head, you know? Just do that shit. It'll save you in the long run. When you undo any bolts, take any bolts out, put them in a Ziploc bag, label them, converter bolts ×3, you know? There's 3 of the same bolts, you know? That's just what I do, and you don't have to remember anything. You can forget about it until you need it again. It's already labeled. You're not going to fuck up. If you're keeping your exhaust manifold or your exhaust Y pipe, any of that stuff, you want to keep stock stuff, you got to undo it. Otherwise, get a Sawzall, cut the shit off, pull it out with the engine. I undid mine. I think it was 14mm bolts for the spring clamps or whatever. Then I pulled the starter, 9/16 bolts, plus the wiring, a 3/4 nut and a 9mm nut, I believe. Label those. Pull the starter, it'll give you a lot more access to the passenger side motor mount. Down here on the back, there's nuts on the back. I can't remember what size they are, but I think it's 5/8 bolts on the one side. But yeah, pulling the starter gives you a good access to this one. And then when you pull the exhaust, there's like a vacuum piece that kind of blocks this one. Otherwise you're doing it by a wrench. Also, while you're down there, undo your 3 torque converter bolts. Now you're gonna jack the car up nice and high. Get her nice and high. Support it safely with your jack stand. Get under there, undo your cross member, your transmission mount. I think those are all 15mm bolts. And also there's a small little connector under there which would kind of hold your drive shaft if it snapped or something. Pull that off. Those are 13mm, I believe. And pull off the heat shield on the passenger side. Now, you're gonna support the tranny with the jack. Lift it way up, pull out that cross member, and then lower down the transmission. Lowering it down is gonna give you access to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bolts from the back with long ass extensions, knuckles, whatever you got. Otherwise, you're reaching your hand down in there bit by bit. It takes forever. I just use all the extensions I have in my box from underneath. I was able to get all 6 of those like that. Took me a little bit, but I got it. I leave the drive shaft hooked up. So now your trans bolts are out. Get your motor mount bolts out if you want now or if you didn't already. The only thing holding that tranny to the engine is the dowel pins. They go in right here and there. Be very gentle, lower the jack down. It's still connected to the engine just from the dowel pins. It could pop out, fall out, you know, just be careful. That's what I did. I lowered it down, I got my jack out of there, I jacked the car all the way back up, took out the jack stands, and then lowered it right down, leaving the back jacked up. So then you got a huge rake. The front's nice and low. It actually gets your header panel a little bit lower than it would just sitting flat on the ground. Once you get your car back down sitting the way it is, get some support under the transmission, put some blocks of wood, put your jack under there, that's gonna stay there. All right, now you're ready to pull the engine. Hook up the chains wherever you can. This engine had a little hook spot, so I used that, and then it already had the carburetor off, so I used the carburetor bolt holes, nice long bolts through the chain. Jacked it out. If you missed any, well, unhook them and label them and keep going. Pull it out, do whatever you want with it. So here's what the V6 motor mounts look like. Those got to come out. They're not very fun to get out. You got to get underneath and get some extensions with knuckles and get to the back side of these bolts. And here's what a factory V8 car looks like, Gbody. So you can see these top two holes are used. This one right here hangs off. It's not used, it's only got a half on the frame there. And then you use that one. Alright, here's the V8 car Gbody. After the motor mounts have been removed, you can see which holes have been used. These two right here, and then this ovaled one down here. Alright, another redneck trick. Tape the bolt in the wrench, especially for these little motor mounts. You're gonna fish it in through that hole and try and get it to poke out there. These two I just got with my fingers. There's a nice hole in behind on the passenger side that you can put one finger through to help guide this bolt. They're all in there just loose. You got to do that first before you tighten them up. This one, I got that one by hand. The rest I'm probably going to have to maybe tape them to the socket sort of deal, and then use all extensions and push them in through the bottom. Well, it wasn't easy, but the wrench with the taped thing worked. Just to get it in there started. It'll be a lot easier now to get an extension with the socket on the back side, and then just have, it's always nicer to have someone else on this side to ratchet it in, but I'll just have the impact ready and zap her up. Alright, so the other half of the motor mount right here, the motor mount brackets on a small block, you can probably get these off any late 70s to 80s small block Chevy car. I found one manufacturer that makes them, and I think they sell them on Summit Racing. I'll put a picture of the part there, but got lucky and I had a set. So another thing you're going to want to have for this swap, unless you're going headers, is this factory Y pipe here off a V8 car. Right there. So you're going to want to have the factory 305 car exhaust manifolds too, unless you're going headers. This is what they look like. Here's the part number here. Looks like GM 1400740 OLHK. Alright, so here's a problem just ran into. Got the factory 305 exhaust manifolds. We were trying to keep it stock as possible. If you look there, this must be an old style set of heads or something, but the 305 heads, the last two on the passenger side, are farther apart than normal, so they are not going to bolt up. Most heads have another bit of metal there with another hole, so you can go both styles. But I don't know if this is an older set of heads or what, but keep that in mind if you want to try and go with the exhaust manifolds, with the factory exhaust manifolds from a 305. You're going to make sure you get yourself a flywheel with the engine. This guy had provided his, and he provided the bolts. You're going to torque them down to 60 foot-pounds. Here's something you definitely don't want to do. You don't use silicone on exhaust manifolds. These things get red hot. We'll burn that shit off in a minute. Also, when I took them off, there was silicone and old gaskets still stuck to the manifolds. Get yourself a scraper like I just did and scrape them off clean. Even use a degreaser after if you want. Clean them right up. Alright, so I did my best to put this B.O.P adapter on the transmission using these two top bolts and then scribing from the back side the line, because this one here is the GM block. So you're going to bolt the plate with this bolt and this bolt, bolt the plate to the engine. you have to make sure the transmission bell housing is going to clear this nut. Also, you're going to have to get shorter bolts for this because that's the transmission bolt bottomed out in there. So I used low profile bolts to bolt this to the block because I want to make sure this bell housing does not interfere with this and make it a bitch mating it up. Here's the other holes which would bolt to the B.O.P transmission. So you obviously can't use them because the block is right there. Another thing to check is your torque converter's bolt pattern versus your flex plate. I measured inside, the inside was 9.5. Did the same on the V6 there, and it looks like it's gonna work out. But you gotta double check that. Never believe this. Old chrome dipstick end was snapped off in the block, and the V6 dipstick was put in there in replacement, right down to the block. Yeah, that's not gonna work. Alright, so this thing's done. Well, as far as we're gonna go, done. He apparently doesn't want me to go any farther, reached his budget, so this is where we're sitting, and this is what I can tell you about the B.O.P shit. It bolts up to the transmission really nice. Bolt it up to the block first, put it in, and then bolt up the transmission. That worked out. The torque converter from the B.O.P transmission, Buick Olds Pontiac, I think it's a turbo 350, but I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. The bolt pattern lines up, but it will not bolt up. It's basically squished against the flex plate that this guy provided. Now, you're gonna have to do your research and make sure you get the proper flex plate, or if you're smart, a Chevy transmission that will bolt up, no problem. But you still want to do your flex plate and torque converter research. Make sure your bolt patterns line up. Make sure you got the proper getting the block number will give you a little bit of info on what this block may have come out of. The other thing is the transmission mount. You're gonna have to oval out the hole there. I don't know if you can see what I've done there, but I've cut a little bit away just so that the mount will get into that hole, because the whole B.O.P and maybe even changing from the V6 to V8 with that style transmission, it moves it back a bit. So I had to oval out that hole to get that to bolt up nice. As far as we're going, that's a shame. I'd like to have this thing running, but it is what it is, and the guy's got what he's got for money. So here's another thing you want to know about this swap. If you think the V6 starter is going to work, it's not. Get yourself a small block Chevy V8 starter. As you can see, these two bolts are right in line. On a normal small block Chevy starter, this one and that one are not aligned. They kind of step apart. This hole will be about over here, or vice versa. Plus, this one has a really short starter bolt, whereas a normal Chevy starter, small block Chevy starter, has two long bolts. One's here and one over here. So you're gonna have to get that bolt. One of these bolts was the right length for the Chevy starter. The second one's way too short, so get yourself a replacement bolt. I don't know if you can see it or not, but this 80 Monte has rubber bushings in between the transmission mount there. I haven't seen that before, but it's a little bit different. I strongly suggest getting all your accessories off of one engine, one parts car. Take the whole front accessories off. That will make your life way easier. Another thing you want to check for on an old small block, or they're all have slight differences, make sure it has the accessory holes drilled in it. 3 there. And this one has 1 there. Some of them have more on the passenger side head, but these are an older set of heads, so that's something you want to take in consideration. Yeah, like I was saying, that whole front accessory, if you can get that whole thing off another vehicle, would benefit you hugely, because as you can see, The brackets for specific engines on the power steering are part of the whole unit. You know, it's all part of a system. You got all the part numbers that are going to work for bracketry and all the front accessories and have them line up. Please let me friggin' know. Another thing is this rad, which is like 2/3 the size of a V8 rad. So you're gonna want a V8 rad with the V8 plastic fan shroud and shit too, because that's gonna help you out. I guess one more thing I should add about getting this transmission bolted up and with the B.O.P style adapter, you see down there, these top two, you use the provided nuts and bolts and bolt the transmission to the adapter, which is bolted to the block. So you get those from the top just by jacking the trans up as high as it'll go. It'll give you more room for that. I strongly suggest taking your distributor cap off, mark it, whatever, but take it off to give you more room, because to get the other trans bolts, just like taking it out, you have the trans cross member out, get the bottom two bolts, then lower the transmission down as low as you can to get those other bolts, kind of like I explained when I was taking it out, you know. Give yourself a little more room with all those extensions. Those exhaust manifolds that he has, they bolt up to these set of heads real good, but I think they're for a truck or something. I did try and fit this one side just as a reference. I'm not doing that for him, but I wanted to see for myself, and they do bump into these motor mount brackets. Yeah, it's a bit of a shame. I really would have liked to find out everything there is to know about the V6 to V8 swap for you guys, especially using the B.O.P style converter, trying to use that old Buick Olds Pontiac transmission, but it is what it is. Until next time.